Good morning, students. Let's take a look at our morning message. May 14th, 2020. Good morning, students. What is the same and what is different about flies and butterflies? Mrs. Kilmer. Let's reread that once. What is the same and what is different about flies and butterflies? So, a few weeks ago, we were reading a lot about butterflies, and that was in the learning calendar as well as in the books that I was reading to you. And then last week, you read a book about flies, and we reread that together earlier this week. So what I want you to do at home is to think to the activity that we've done before in class when we learn about two things that are maybe similar but still have their differences. And then we compare and contrast them. So if you'll recall, we learned about Johnny Appleseed and Paul Bunyan, and then we used these colored hoops in the classroom, right? Remember we had that activity where you were sorting some facts about those two characters into what was the same and what was different. So I've made a chart to show you about how you can do this at home. Just give me a minute and I'll be right back. Welcome back, students. So when we use two circles, like we use those hoops in the classroom, to sort facts and to get our thinking organized, that's called using a Venn diagram, right? It's a kind of a diagram. A diagram is usually like shapes and labels and things that help you organize facts and help you organize your thinking. So if you'll remember, we've done this in the past. In this case, the two circles are going to be a circle for butterflies and a circle for flies. And you can just draw two circles on a piece of paper. And where they overlap in the middle is a little space where in the middle, if you'll remember, we write what are some things that are the same about butterflies and flies. And then in the other part of the circle, we write what are the differences, what is different about butterflies and flies. So I just wrote one fact to start us off, right? So the same thing is that they are both insects, right? So I'm not going to do this for you. I'm expecting you to do this at home. If you think it's tricky to do circles, you could also just make a list. You could make a list you could just write a list of things, of facts about butterflies, a list of facts about flies, and then you could maybe write another list or put a list in the middle of things that are the same about them. Okay? I'll be back in a minute with our information book about Thomas Jefferson. This morning we're going to continue our learning about Thomas Jefferson with another biography. So this is a rookie biography called Thomas Jefferson, Author, Inventor, President. I think I've explained to you before that I really like this series because it has a lot of good pictures in it with things that illustrate and explain things about the person's life. On the front, I see a map of the United States that shows the Louisiana Purchase. I see Monticello, and I see Thomas Jefferson talking with somebody who looks like Benjamin Franklin, actually. Okay, here we go. Thomas Jefferson, Author, Inventor, President by Carol Greene, Children's Press. Oh, and there's a portrait. A portrait, remember, portrait is a picture, a painting, or a photograph of a person. And this is Thomas Jefferson, and it has the dates of his life, 1743 to 1826, his lifespan. Thomas Jefferson was a real person. He lived from 1743 to 1826. Jefferson did many things to help the young United States of America and was its third president. This is his story. Table of contents: Young Tom Jefferson, Beginnings, Problems, President Thomas Jefferson, Always Doing. Always doing. I guess he was a busy guy. Important dates and index. We'll just read the first half today. Okay, Chapter 1. I see a heading. Heading. Remember the signs? Young Tom Jefferson. Oh, I see a picture. And I see a caption. Young Tom Jefferson crept quietly through the forest. All at once he stopped and knelt down. There on a leaf sat a bug, a different kind of bug, one Tom had never seen before. Tom watched the bug for a long time and wrote down what he saw. It wasn't schoolwork. He just wanted to learn all he could about that bug. Wow, I'm making connection to our learning about flies and butterflies, and also to the learning you've done with Senora Salazar about being an observer, being a científico, right? And doing observations. Okay, this is a picture. It says the Jefferson family farm was named Shadwell. This house now stands on the Jefferson land near Charlottesville, Virginia. So Charlottesville, Virginia is the place in Virginia we're talking about where a lot of his early life took place. You could maybe ask your parents to find it on a map. Learning was important to young Thomas Jefferson. At school, Tom learned to read, to write, and to do arithmetic. But in the forests near his Virginia home, he learned about nature. Tom ran home to tell someone about the bug. His father was busy working on their farm. His mother was busy with her young children. But his big sister Jane listened to him. She always had time for Tom. So here's a picture of Thomas Jefferson's schoolhouse. I'm not sure if that is really his schoolhouse, but I think this is really a picture of a mill on the Jefferson farm. Remember, a mill is where they grind things up, like grinding corn, right? So a mill, and it sometimes uses water. You can see the wheels there that could use water to turn grinding stones. When Tom was 9, he went away to school. When he was 14, his father died. Life was harder then, but Tom still went to school. Of course he had fun too. Sometimes he and his friend Dabney acted silly. Dabney had a fast horse. Tom had a slow one. But Tom made a bet that his horse could beat Dabney's horse in a race on February 30th. Tom won that bet. There is no February 30th, right? Because February only goes up usually to 28, sometimes to 29, never to 30. When Tom was just 16, he went away to the College of William and Mary in Williamsburg, Virginia. And here's a picture of what the College of William and Mary looked like in Jefferson's time. And it's still there. I remember I said you could go there when you grow up, if you'd like. At that time, America was made up of colonies that belonged to England. Williamsburg was the capital of the colony of Virginia. Tom met the governor who ruled Virginia for England. Tom played the violin. He and the governor and 2 other men made music together. I'm making a connection to our learning yesterday where it said he liked to play the violin, and I had a picture in the book of him playing violin with his wife, right? But Tom studied too. 15 hours every day. I wonder if that's an exaggeration. Learning was still important to young Thomas Jefferson. So these are pictures of the rebuilt Williamsburg that some of you may have visited. It says Williamsburg, Virginia has been rebuilt. Today it looks the way it did when Thomas Jefferson lived there. And this is the governor's mansion where the governor lived. And we've talked about that before. Historical places that have been rebuilt to look the way they were long ago. And lots of times there are reenactors there, interpreters who also dress the way it was back then and can teach you about what life was like back then. Okay, chapter 2, beginnings. And there is Thomas Jefferson. Oh, he became a lawyer in 1767. After 2 years of college, Tom decided that he wanted to be a lawyer, so he worked for 5 years in a friend's law office. Then he passed his exam and became a lawyer. He was a good one, but Tom wanted to learn about other things too. He read about how to plan and build buildings. Then he began to build his own house near the farm where he grew up. The house sat on a little mountain, so Tom called it, do you remember from yesterday's book? Monticello. Monticello means little mountain in Italian. Then Tom was elected to the House of Burgesses. They spoke for the people of the colony of Virginia. Once again, Tom spent time in Williamsburg. He met a girl, Martha. She was smart and pretty, and she loved music. Tom and Martha got married on January 1st, 1772, and he took her to Monticello. It had only one room then, but Martha knew that Tom would finish it someday. And here it says Thomas Jefferson drew the plans for the main house at Monticello. And you can go visit that today in Charlottesville too. Right now, oops, let me get, that doesn't quite connect, so I'm going to go back and reread for a sec. It says, Martha knew Tom would visit it someday, but right now, his mind was busy with other things. More and more people thought England was unfair to the American colonies. They wanted to be free. The Revolutionary War began in 1775. People from each colony met to talk about becoming a new country. Tom came for Virginia. And here's a public notice calling for colonists to join Washington, that's George Washington's army. The Battle of Lexington was the first battle of the Revolutionary War. So there's a poster encouraging colonists to join the army of George Washington to fight for freedom. The group asked Tom to write something that would tell the world they were free now. Tom wrote the Declaration of Independence. On July 4th, 1776, the people who had met adopted the Declaration. That was the first Independence Day of the United States of America. So here is a picture of him working. It says Jefferson worked long hours writing the Declaration of Independence. You can see how many changes he made to the Declaration before he was happy with what he wrote. And this is a big painting of the signing of the Declaration. And what I always love showing this to students, because it just shows, just like in Writer's Workshop, when we write something the first time, that's just the first draft, right? We often cross out and change it and cross out and change it to make it our very best writing. And that's exactly what Jefferson did. You can see where he crossed out and he added stuff and changed stuff for the Declaration of Independence. Chapter 3, Problems. A new country has many problems to solve. Thomas Jefferson helped the United States to do that. First, he worked for better laws in Virginia. He helped pass a law that gave people the right to choose their own religion. He was proud of that law. From 1779 to 1781, Jefferson was governor of Virginia. So this chapter comes after we become independent, right? After the Revolutionary War. And it says that he was the governor, the leader of our state. And when he was governor of Virginia, the lawmakers met in the old state capitol. So there's another portrait of Jefferson, a little older, when he's governor. And there's a picture of the Capitol building where they met long ago. Later, he wrote a book, Notes on the State of Virginia. In it, he wrote about geography, plants and animals of Virginia. He wrote about other things too. He said that slavery was wrong. He said the Indians had been treated unfairly. He said most wars were foolish. In 1782, a terrible thing happened to Jefferson's family. His wife, Martha, died. Jefferson was sick with grief, right? He was so sad, he just felt sick all the time. He stayed in his room for 3 long weeks. Then he roamed the forest. That means he wandered around in the forest and rode his horse. Nothing helped his pain. But he had 2 little girls, Martha and Mary. They needed their father. So Jefferson made himself get better for their sake. And remember, Martha and Mary, their nicknames were Polly and Patsy. And this is a picture of Patsy. That's one of his daughters. Remember, only 2 of their children lived to adulthood. And again, it's interesting to remember here, he said that slavery was wrong, right? But he had slaves his whole life. In 1783, he was elected to the Continental Congress. There, he figured out the system of money that we still use today. In 1785, President Washington asked Jefferson to be minister to France. He took Martha with him, and Mary came later. That means he took Patsy and Polly, his daughters. In France, Jefferson helped other countries understand that the United States was a fine new country. He told them about the land, the plants, the animals. He got them to trade with the United States. Jefferson also found plants to take home with him. He liked to try new things. It says Thomas Jefferson was one of the first farmers to grow tomatoes in the United States. And I've got a fun story about this for you on another day, all about how Jefferson really did like to try new things and help other people learn to try new things and to help farmers learn to grow new things. In 1789, he came home. He became George Washington's first Secretary of State. That was a big job with big problems. The Secretary of the Treasury, Alexander Hamilton, right? He's a little famous now because there was a big play about him, right? Alexander Hamilton said rich people should run the government. But Jefferson said the government belonged to all the people. All other people took sides. Soon there were two parties, two groups. Jefferson ran for president against John Adams, one of Hamilton's people. Jefferson lost, but he became vice president. That's how elections worked in those days. Jefferson went on fighting for his ideas. So I think there's two interesting things to kind of reread and make sure we're understanding here. One group in the government thought that rich people should run the government. And an important thing to understand is one reason they thought that was because in the old days, not everybody got to go to school, right? So it was mostly only richer people who got to go to college and university and learn a lot about things that might help run the government. So that's why some people thought, well, we can't just have everybody running the government because not everybody understands or has learned enough to be able to do that. But someone like Jefferson said, no way, that our country is made up of the real people. The most of the people are the farmers, right? And all the people, and all those people are doing the work of the country, so they're the ones who should be deciding what happens in the government, not just the rich people who got to go to university at the top. But they disagreed. Okay, we're going to stop there for today and save the rest of the book for tomorrow. And then, as I mentioned, I have some other kind of fun storybooks that make connections to some of these facts that we're learning about Jefferson. So I'll see you later this afternoon for our fiction book.